welcome to our webinar, Aplusify's webinar on data migration. I'm Vinu Deschetti, Director of Marketing and Sales at Aplusify. It is our pleasure to bring you educational webinars like this one. We love to share what we know and have learned, as well as a little something from you along the way. Neeraj Garg is our speaker today. As our COO, he leads a team of 200 developers with various levels of Salesforce certifications. He's created this internal task force that shares lessons learned and best practices that's shared and applied across our portfolio of nonprofits and associations. In this webinar, Neeraj will be talking about all things data migration. There's a lot to cover, what problems you might incur, and his tips and tricks he recommends on this data journey. But before we begin, let's take a look at who's joining us today on this webinar so we can tweak that conversation a little bit better for you. So I'm going to launch several polls. The first one is, what's your current AMS or CRM? If you can just kind of jot down your answer there, we can see what everyone's using. Great. Neeraj, it seems like we've got a lot of Salesforce users.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay. Next question we have is, where are you in your data migration journey? So are you currently in a system, in a legacy system, and you're moving to a new AMS or CRM? Or have you migrated the data and you've had some problems and you've got to work that out? Or is this not your first migration and you're planning on migrating additional data from a different source? So if you can just, oh, I got to launch the poll for you to see that. So if you can just jot down your answers there, and we can see where you guys are. The great thing about today's conversation is no matter where you are on this journey or how many times you've done it, hopefully there's a few tips and tricks that Neeraj can share with you. Great. And let me share those results as well so everybody kind of knows. Okay. Looks like you guys, most of you are somewhere doing the doing a migration, so that's great. Let's go on to poll number 3. I promise we don't have that many. What's your confidence level? Are you confident? Are you confident about what you're doing with the data migration? Or do you have an internal team that's helping you out with that migration? Or do you have a consultant that's taking care of everything? Or could you use a little bit of help? I know I could use a little bit of help with everything in life these days. So, and data migration is not as easy as one might think it would be if you haven't done it before. Great. Okay. Well, it's great. I'm glad that you guys are here. We definitely have some information to share with you. So you're not alone in needing some help. So one last question I have for you guys is, where is your data coming from? Select all that apply. Is it coming from accounting, a previous AMS or CRM, marketing? You know, those marketing folks always have data out there for you. And then LMS or an event software or something else. Again, let me launch this poll. If you guys just pick whatever is right up your alley. Great. For those of you that are choosing other, I'm very curious. If you get a chance throughout the session today, would love to hear what other is for you, and put that into the chat. Would love to hear about that. Great. And let me share those results so that you all kind of know as well. Great. Neeraj, do you feel like you've got a good starting point for today?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think they are great results.
Okay.
We have got a mixed bag where we have data coming from various sources. So that's good.
Great. Well, why don't you get started? Give us,
yes.
give us a rundown of what you got for us today.
Sure. Let me just share my screen. Yep. So hello, everyone. I think today's session is, I think it's a very hot topic because data migration is an activity which we all plan to do. And what I'm going to do today is maybe guide you through some misconceptions that we have for data migration, uh, see what we can do best as a practice to make this process smooth, and what other recommendations that we have. So let's get started. So as you can see in the screen, right, there are three data migration misconceptions which most of the people have. They think that data migration is something where you just need to migrate data, copy it from one system, and then just paste it into another system, which is, oh, okay, great. It's like Control C, Control V. You copy and then you paste. But let me tell you, it's much more than that, right? It's not as simple as it seems to be from its words, data migration. And I think to explain that, we can take an example where uh, suppose you plan to move from your old house, and you bought a new house, and you want to move from your old house to the new house. Now it sounds simple that you have got a new house, you have got an old house, you just need to move from an old house to a new house. So, but if you actually think about it, it's not just the family members or you who are moving from one place to another. It's the belongings that you have in your old house that would actually also need moving from that old house to the new one. Uh, Now, imagine a situation where you just pack your bags from the old house and dump it in the new one without thinking in like where to place your uh, packings into the new house because you have not thought of it. And ultimately, what would happen is that in the new house, when you plan to search for certain items, you will, it's very hard to find because you don't know which item is where because it's all dumped. So it's similar with the data migration. So your house is, imagine your house as your whole AMS system or your Salesforce system, and all the belongings as the data that resides within that system. Now, if you migrate your data without planning, like when you move from one house to another, you may have to plan like I want to move this belonging, this luggage to here. I have n number of wardrobes in my new house. I have n number in my new house. So how would I actually place them? So that is something that needs to be thought through before you actually move from one place to another. And if you do that planning before, if you think about it, and if you have that kind of iterations where you exactly know what items will fit in where in your new house, I think life would be much more easier for you. I think it's very similar exercise with your data migration as well. So you have a source system, which is your old house, and then you have a target system, which is actually a new house. Now, if you have not thought of on how will you actually move your data from one structure to another and thought about it, and just dump the data from one system to another, that data will be of no use to you. So uh, data migration is not just about copying data from one system to another. It's much more than that, where you actually need to plan what your data is, what you actually need to move, and why do you need to move it, and where will you actually place that source data in the target system, because the structures of two systems would be very, very different. So that kind of thought process has to be thought for before you actually migrate from uh, one system to another. Then other misconception is that we just have to move data. Why just not move it directly to the production system? Because that is where the actual users use it. And obviously, that is something that is a very simple approach to think about. But you should also think about that the live system that, or the production system or the actual system that your users are using is actually earning a revenue for you, is actually your bread and butter, is actually the AMS software that is running live. And you cannot just mess that up by moving data without thinking about it, because it can have and several. So in the best case scenario, it may be that everything works fine and your live system works absolutely as you desired it to be. So that is the best case scenario. But the worst case scenario may be that something went wrong and your system gets messed up. And then what will happen? Your production systems are down, your users are not able to use it, and it's all a havoc and mess. So I think we should think more about analyzing, giving it a thought on what we need to do, maybe get some consulting if we exactly don't know what needs to be done, and then go about migrating the data. So I think in the next few slides, we will actually see like what problems actually happen when we do a data migration and what are the different steps which we can follow to avoid that. And we know, feel free to pop in any questions that we may have in between, and I can answer that if required. So these are the problems, 4 major problems that actually happen when you are doing your data migration. Now, as I said, that it may be that you don't want to move all your data from your source system into the new system, because suppose you're migrating your AMS software and you just want to move the event data to the event app or the event system that you have bought. It can be moving Fontiva data to C event, or maybe Fontiva to Salsa. It can be anything, right? So it may be that you don't want to just migrate everything into it. It must be some kind of specific data that you wanted. But for that specific data, you should actually know and have a kind of report on what data needs to be moved in. And most of the times before we move data, we miss that kind of generating a report on what data we actually expect to move in. And sometimes what happens, and we have seen with many of our customers, that when we are working on a system, we find that a lot of fields or columns are there, or a lot of data is there, which is actually not required in the system that we are working in. And when you have got all this unnecessary data in your system, it actually creates a clutter in your system, right? It's more or like the unwanted things that you have in your house, and that creates a clutter. So it's same with data, the unnecessary data that you have, that creates a clutter in your system. And when you pull out reports, right, all this clutter will happen, and this will actually hamper the uh, pulling of reports, or maybe the cleanliness of data or the data quality. So it is always advisable that when you are moving the data, you should pull out some exception reports which tell you like which data needs to be moved in, or there are some exceptions to it. And second thing is lack of field mapping. Now, as I said, that when you move from one place to another place, right? So the structures of both the houses or both the flats or both the apartments is different. You may be moving from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom house, or it may have your previous house may have a storeroom, your new house may not have a storeroom. So you exactly need to map how you are going to map all this stuff that you're going to migrate from your old house to new house. And you need to say that, oh, this is my cupboard 1 or my wardrobe 1 luggage or belonging. I need to move it to this room and this wardrobe, right? So if you have thought through it, then the life is easy, because once you are into your new house, you have labeled it well. You know, like this is the luggage from my wardrobe 1, room 1, and I need to actually move that luggage to room 3, wardrobe 2. So if that kind of information is there, it would be easy to set your house, right? Otherwise, You will dump wherever you want to, and all your belongings would be in a cluttered fashion, in a improper way. And when you go and find them, you will not find them. So it's same with the data. If you have not mapped the two systems, you have not mapped what you want to move and where you want to move it, and you have not done that kind of mapping between those two systems, it would actually create mess in your new system, and you will get n number of data migration issues that we regularly get with our customers. And I think most of it is because the whole process of mapping and generating exception reports has not been thought through before. And then obviously we have improper data management. When I say improper data management, I mean that when you are moving your data from one system to another, right? And if the data in your current system is actually wrong, when I say wrong, it means that there are unnecessary data that is present in the system. Then there may be that the wrong values are there in the wrong field. So you may have a date of birth field, and the format in different fields is wrong. So instead of a DD, YYY format, you may have some dates in YY format or in some other different format. So it's always advisable that when you are doing a migration, you actually do a data management check in your source system, right? And make it correct, because that is the data which is actually going to migrate to the new system. And if the data that is there in your source system is incorrect or improper, it would actually create the same rippling effect in your new system, and you would then have two systems to handle, right? One, your source system, which is actually already facing the issues because of improper data management, and then you are replicating the same problem in the new system as well. So it's always good to give it a thought, get the data cleansing activity done in your source system, and then try moving that data when it is clean, and that would actually save you time in the longer run. I think the fourth thing that uh, we miss is time management. Whenever we are doing data migration, or we have seen consultants who do data migration, they are bound to time. Obviously, you need to have a time limit to it. But what we fail to do is we just do a time management based on the best case scenario, where we say that if everything moves well, we are going to finish it in next 3 months or 2 months, right? But what we miss is that if something goes wrong in between, and it can happen, right? It happens in real life as well. You plan things and then they don't go as planned. So you should keep a little buffer on managing that kind of things. So your expectation should be realistic. I know it should be aggressive, but you should have a realistic approach, and you should keep that kind of buffer, that if something goes wrong during my migration, I have time to actually fix it, so that I am not under the pressure of time, and I have to deliver a date, and then I do some shortcuts which actually result in messing up of both the systems. So I think these four things are really important uh, and these are the four things that contribute to 90% of the problems during data migration. If you are able to have a preventive measure to avoid all these problems right at the start, I think it would be a smoother data migration, which will have lesser issues in your system, and it would make your life much smoother and peaceful.
So Neeraj, before you continue, I wanted to ask, we have a couple of questions here. Planning is always, it's always a thing that you need to do with Salesforce or any AMS. When you are planning for a data migration, there are so many different departments that get involved in terms of who owns that data, whether it's accounting, membership, events. What do you recommend in terms of engaging those different departments? At what level, or how engaged should they be? Should they migrate the data themselves, or should they, how involved do they need to be in that process? How do you go about figuring that piece out?
Yeah, I think that is a very apt question, and I was going to talk about in future slides, but since you have raised it now, obviously, when you are migrating the data, and obviously it's different businesses who are involved, because you may have your finance team, you may have your operations team, your sales team, accounting team, who have a say in what data should be moved and what should not be. So it's always good, and that is what we take care of whenever we are planning to do a data migration for our clients. What our step one is to engage all the businesses, have a kind of discovery sessions with them, maybe hold workshops with them, and try to understand what is the critical data that is critical to them, and what do they think about the different, and in fact in the field mappings as well, right? There are certain data that you exactly don't know. It may be very important for the business, particular data, but for a technical team, it might not be an important because it's just a technical field. So it's always important to understand what different businesses feel about the different data that is held in the system. And it's always good to have a collaborative effort where we have a discovery session with all the business users, get a buy-in from them, prepare a document where we prepare exception reports on what data we think should not be moving to the other system, or what are the exceptions that we should take care of. Maybe there are some missing data, but we still want to go ahead with the data migration. So that kind of exception reports we should pull in. We should do a field mapping and then get a sign off from the business in terms of, yeah, this is the date of birth and it's a different field altogether in the new system. What do you want to do about it? Or maybe it's a membership since date. Do you actually want to move it, or should we leave it behind? And similarly, we should pull in, I think, before start, some data cleansing reports where we actually show them that these are the data that is actually missing in your system, or that is invalid or inconsistent. Or maybe it may be that there are certain date of births for your members which are actually missing in your system. And if you don't populate them right at the source system, they will actually not get populated in the new system as well. And then when you pull in reports, you will have missing data. So I think all these reports should be discussed with all the business users, and we should get inputs from them, rectify those problems at the start, and then go ahead with it. So I think a kind of analysis, brainstorming, discovery sessions, and a kind of document which can serve as the master document for everyone. It should get signed off before we actually move to data migration. And all this activity actually takes time, right? It's always good to spend time in this analysis and planning activity, because if that is done right, there are 95% chances that your data migration would be smooth. Any other questions, Vinu, or should we move on?
No, let's get into the nitty gritty here.
Yeah. So we have talked about the problems that we face during data migration. Now, it's the problems. Every problem should have a solution, and based on our experience and based on our research with working with global clients, we have done hundreds of migrations, and we have come up with these 5 pointers, or maybe 5 best practices that we think every organization should involve themselves in to have a smooth data migration. Now, we can talk about all these steps in detail, but I think first step is take mandatory data backup. And I will just move to the next slide to just demonstrate this point. So whenever you are moving data, you should actually, because the data in your system is very precious. It is something that you don't want to lose, and it actually tells you about your customers. It's your customers' personal data. So that holds a lot of value in the system, and at any cost, you can't afford to lose it, because that is something that you have built your AMS for. Without data, I don't think so there is any value to any system that you are using, because it's data that you see at the front end. It's data that you want to see. It's the data that helps you understand your customer. It's the data that helps you understand finance, accounting, because you know what revenue you have generated. So whenever you are doing the data migration, always make sure, and to be on the safest side, you should always keep a backup of your existing source data. This is the step you should never miss, right? Whatever someone is telling you that the data migration would be smooth, it will not have any errors, but irrespective of that, I think the first step you should do is just keep a backup of all the data, irrespective of what it is, and save a copy of it somewhere in a secure place, in a place where you can keep it. Because even if the data migration goes wrong and there are some problems to it, and you have to roll back to what you were before, this database backup will actually help you in doing that. So don't worry about what. So if you see this screen, whenever you go up for this data export stuff, it asks you like what all type of information you want to include in that export. So just to be on the safer side, just click on the first column, which says include all data, right? You don't have to apply a lot of mind and say and check what you have to. Just say include all data and keep a database backup with you each and every time. How much trust you have on your consultant, it doesn't matter, but that is the first step your consultant should tell you to do. And if he's not telling you to do, you should do it. And if you're listening, I think this is the first step and the most basic step that everyone should do it. Keep a database backup. Backup is necessary for. Yeah,
Um,
sorry, Vinu.
no, sorry to interrupt, but in terms of that backup, a couple of questions here. Do you have a
Yeah.
recommendation of where that backup actually exists? Does it exist on a server, in the cloud? Is it on someone's desktop? What are some recommendations that you have on that?
Oh yeah. So obviously this data that you're keeping a backup should be somewhere where it is either on the cloud or on a server which is secured. It cannot be on a desktop or any kind of personal machines because it's secured data. And whenever you are doing that database backup, make sure that that database backup is encrypted so that even if someone has got access to it, he is not able to view what the data is, right? So always recommended that when you're doing a data backup, keep it on a secured storage server or a cloud server if you have. If you're using Amazon, maybe on Amazon S3. If you're using your own data servers, on your own data servers, but never on a machine, never on a personal machine, and always on a secured machine, which is 100% secured, because that is all the wealth that your AMS system has created in all the years that has been running. So your data is your only wealth. So you have to put n number of locks on top of it to keep it secure.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation of keeping data secure. Edgar actually has a very good question that he put into chat is when you're backing up the system, are you talking about the legacy system or the target system? Which is it both? Is it?
Okay, so if you have data in both these systems, so there can be three scenarios, right? One scenario is that you don't have anything, right? Both your systems are empty and you're planning to do anything new. So you don't need any backup for that. But if either of the systems has data into it, it is always advisable to keep a backup of both the legacy data plus the data in your target system. So you should have separate backups for both, because to restore things back to their original, if something goes wrong, you will need both these database backups to restore both the systems. So any data in any system that you have and you're doing this data migration activity, keep a backup of it without giving it a thought.
We have one more question before we move on. Is there a file type that you recommend for these backups?
Generally, all these data export files are, so every database has a different archive file that it actually refers to, but to make it secured, you can always encrypt the data. and there are different encryption softwares available in the market that you can look into. And you can just talk to your consultant teams or to a security team to keep your data secured.
Okay, great. Well, let's
Yeah.
move on to your second piece.
Yeah. Yep. So second piece is field mapping. I think that is something which I was talking about as one of the problems that we face, that when we are moving from source system to target system, we have two different structures. Like in this slide that you can see, we did one of the Salesforce migration to a Salsa event app. Now, the same data that resides in a source system may have a different, maybe called with a different name in the target system. So like if you're using Salesforce, you have contacts field in Salesforce, but when you actually migrate that data into Salsa, that field is actually called supporters. So your contacts field in Salesforce actually maps to supporters. Now, if you don't know that and you have not done that field mapping, uh, there is no point in doing data migration, because you will not know from which field you have to migrate to which field. So it's always good to have that kind of mapping for all your fields in both the systems. So like opportunities in Salesforce is called donations in Salsa. Your campaigns in Salesforce are called activities in Salsa. So there are two different systems, two different structures, and they have different nomenclatures. So unless you understand which field in system one maps to which field in system two, your database migration activity would be futile, right? Because unless you know where to go from and where to go to, uh, where will you go, right? What will you migrate? So it's relatively simple that you have to have this kind of field mapping, and that is, these field mappings have to be done in conjunction with the business, and you have to show them that we have prepared this field mapping, and this is just a high level diagram. What you need to do is maybe put an Excel map, put in all the column names for your target fields, and put in all these field names for your target fields and the source fields, and just map them one by one. So it may take a while for you to do it, but it's worth the exercise to do it, because you should exactly know what direction you should be moving in. Any questions, Vinu, on that? Okay, I think let's move on. Now the third point is that we need to have a ID for each of the fields that we are migrating. It has to be uh, a unique ID associated to each of the fields. Uh, and that's important because, as I told you, right, when you are moving your belongings from one house to another, right, you need to tag in what the source data is, right? So, like I told you, this luggage belongs to room one, wardrobe one. So you should put a tag to it, right? And that actually helps you when you are migrating data. So that is something that you should apply when you are doing data migration as well. You should actually put a tag to all the data that you are going to export. And that actually helps you when things go wrong, or maybe you want to reference like, oh, this was one of the sample data that we exported from this table and this field, right? So it would be instant. You can actually understand that and get to the results very quickly. And similarly, I think it's always recommended that you have a legacy ID attached to all your migrated records. Like you can see in this screen, right? We have got this record where you can see this legacy protect ID. Now, this legacy protect ID is actually the legacy ID of the source system. Now, if the things go wrong and you have to actually refer to the old system, this legacy ID is actually going to help you out trace back your data in the database backup that you have created, or maybe in the legacy system that is still there with you. Because without that ID, you cannot actually go and reference your data in the legacy system. So we have covered field mapping, we are done data backup. And I think the fifth very important point that we should be focusing on is clean data, as I told you in our earlier slides. So you have data which is there in your source system, but you exactly don't know like whether the data that you have, are there any missing records in it, or are the fields that or the data that is there in your system is actually correct. Because if that is not correct and you plan to migrate the same data without cleaning that data or fixing that data, that same data is going to get migrated to your new system, and you will have similar problems in your new data as well, new target system as well. So it's always good to have these kind of cleansing reports pulled in from your existing system, so that you can actually see what records are missing. So in this screen, what we did was we actually pulled out all the contacts from our database, which were missing all addresses, right? Similarly, all the contacts which were missing home addresses. Now, once you have done that data, it's always good to put that in a dashboard and maybe present it to the business users, because they're the best people who can tell you like whether we actually want to go ahead with all these missing addresses, or do you want to first rectify them and move in, right? So that is a call we should take collaboratively with the business users, and that is where we were talking about having a session with them to do a planning and get these exception reports signed off. Because if the business says no, I actually want to put in all the missing addresses first and then migrate it, I think the first task before migration would be then to fix all these issues, and then migrate the clean data that we have, or all the complete data that we have. And though it may sound that it may take more time, but it will actually save you a lot of hassle afterwards, because what you have done is cleaned your data first, right, in the first instance, and then move that clean data into the new system. So you have saved a lot of problems in your current system, plus you have saved and taken a preventive measure to prevent a lot of unwanted problems that might have occurred in your target system. So I think clean data approach beforehand is very important. And if we go back, so I think if we take care of these 5 best practices before we actually do our data migration, I think that would actually help. So first step is take a mandatory backup, so that in case of any emergencies, you have a backup which you can refer back to. Make sure that you have clear understanding of what fields are there in your source system and what fields are there in your target system. Then create unique ID for each record, so that you know that your current system and the target system are matchable. You should create data tags to make sure that you exactly know what data you have exported, and if there is a problem, you can go back to that tag and see what information you had exported to the target system. And fifth is make sure that you have clean data in place before moving it to the new system.
So Neeraj, I have a question about clean data. So the data you're talking about, it can be several different types of data, dirty data, right? It's not only about whether it's missing addresses or just how the data comes in, but could it also be just data, old data, like members who haven't engaged with the organization in over 30 years, and they're obviously old contacts that probably need to purge. Is that part of that cleansing process that you would recommend?
Yes, that is correct, Vinu. Everything. So when we talk about data cleansing, it's just not the missing records. Missing records is one of these stuff. Then what we are talking about is anything that you think is not consistent comes as a part of data cleansing. So all your date formats should be in consistent all across the system. It is not that your date in one of the records is in a different format, in the other records a different format, because that is going to create a mismatch. And obviously your data has to be valid in the sense that if there is a requirement of a name field, you should have a first name into that, not a value into it. So your data should be valid. So it has to be consistent. It has to be valid. It does not have to be duplicate. Even duplicate data is something that comes in data cleansing, because if it is a duplicate data, the same records get floated into the new system, and you get those similar duplicate data problems in your new system as well. And 90% of the users complain about getting wrong data in their reports, which is most of the times a result of incorrect data migration, because we have not taken care of all these 5 things. If we would have taken care of all these 5 things that we are talking about here, we would we would cover at least 95% of the problems that we still face with our clients in terms of duplicate data, in terms of not getting data, missing data, in terms of inconsistent data. So all these things can be rectified at a initial design stage itself. And most of our clients, because they are in a hurry to do things, or maybe don't understand the process, miss all these things. And obviously, when the data is moved, we face all these issues in the new system.
It sounds like there's needs to be a little bit of setting the expectation with the other team members, whether it's departments or individuals, of saying it's not as easy as a import export of data, of spreadsheets. There's actually this process that needs to go, that needs to happen, and perhaps they even need to be part of that process. Earlier you talked about formatting of fields like the DDMMYY, and I'm assuming that's the day, month, year, whether it's the very many permutations that you can have of putting that information in. Do you recommend fixing data in the legacy system, or like, let's say it's a date field? Do you recommend fixing that in a legacy system, or exporting it into, let's say, a spreadsheet, then fixing it, or and fixing it in the spreadsheet, and then or whether it import it into your system, new system, and fixing it there? At what point should the data be cleansed?
I think data should be cleansed really at the start stage when you notice that problem. So if you notice a problem that your dates are lying in different formats, you should actually make sure that you correct the source data itself, right? Because if you don't correct that source data, you are going to migrate that same data to the target system. So it's always better to cleanse the data at the start of the phase, rather than doing it after migration. Because then what you are doing is, because you have got data issues in the source system, you are replicating the same issue in the target system, and then you have double job to do. You have to clean this stuff in the source system and you have to clean this stuff in the target system. While if you just clean this stuff right at the start, uh, you don't have to do anything in the target system because the data is all good. So it's always good to do it right at the stage when you detect it, right? Unless you are running in time constraints or anything. But even if you are running in time constraints, I would suggest that you do it beforehand because that is ultimately going to save you time in the future.
So we have two more questions that are, I think, are quite related. One person wanted to ask about, is there type of a comprehensive list of cleanup tasks that one should have on hand? And then the other question is, should you create mock-up of the reports you want to see before deciding on what you migrate? In my eyes, those two questions are related. But can you talk about a little bit about your approach of perhaps working backwards, of starting with what the vision is for the data and how that affects kind of working backwards to get it clean?
Oh yeah, so I think the approach should be that uh, I think what we generally recommend our clients is maybe do spot checks when you're doing migrations. So it should not be that once you have done all your, I think I can go to the slides where we talk more about recommendations. So I think the approach should be that we should do spot checks in between to ensure that to ensure data integrity. So we should try to move a sample data from the source system to the target system, and we should ask the business users to actually test it out, right? And that would actually give you a feel of what is wrong in the system uh, beforehand. So it's like doing the data migration step by step rather than doing it as a full blown process. Because what that will do is it will actually give the technical team a feedback on what issues or errors they are expecting, and they can actually go and fix that issues in the source system itself before migrating the remaining records. So our approach is always to do a sample data migration first with a set of specific records. That actually helps you in testing your scripts, your tools, which are doing your data migration. Plus, it actually helps you assess your data quality. And if that kind of POC for data migration can be done along with the business team itself, it actually helps you in validating the data from the business users. They also get that relief factor that what we are doing is right. It also gives you an idea about the time that we are going to spend in doing the entire migration, because you have done a set of sample data migration. You know it's going to take, uh, it took 2 weeks, then your entire migration would take around 2 or 3 months. So it's a relief factor for both these sides, right? Where you actually have tested your scripts by running a sample data, and you have assessed your data quality. And in assessing that data quality, if the data is bad, you have known that these are the columns which are not good, and we need to actually go and clean them beforehand.
I do want to mention that in a previous webinar where we talked about dashboards and reports, we actually talk a little bit about how creating these dashboards and reports is a good starting point to perhaps clean your data, but that's once your data is in the system. That's before you do that's after you do your migration. We'll make sure you get a copy of that presentation as well. But and specifically, there is a dashboard that talks about data cleanliness, just looking at the different types of data one particular organization was looking for that was important for them. And it was taking that vision from creating reports and dashboards that were needed by the C-suite, the leadership team that needed to know how the organization was doing, whether it was memberships, new memberships, renewals, or even new donations or recurring donations. But taking that vision and saying, looking at the data that comes out into those reports and saying, does this look right? And a lot of times, if it's the first go at it, it's not going to look right. There's going to be something in there that needs to be tweaked. It could either be because the report needs to be tweaked or the type of dashboard that's being built, those kind of things. But also it could be the root of the problem could also be the data itself. And that is that will give you a clue as to going back to see what data needs to be fixed and cleaned.
Yes, I
Or
think that's true, and I think one thing that I would recommend is that when you are talking about all these data cleansing stuff, uh, it's not a one-time activity that you should be doing. It's a continuous process that you should be doing in your organization. And there should be a team who is auditing your data and checking the data quality at every stage, because as your system grows, the data in that system grows. And every data that grows is entering your system. You need to validate whether it is consistent, it is valid, and it follows a particular data quality parameters. And I think if we can have that data checklist in place, which we generally have for our clients, we do a health check of their system where we produce data health quality check as well, where we tell them like, obviously, like you said, we produce dashboards for them where they can actually see what is the data quality of the system and what all things that we need to fix. So yeah, obviously, yes.
yeah. Well, we're running out of time today. If anybody has any other questions, you can definitely give us a call or email us or contact us on our website. I'm throwing up our contact us page here. Feel free to contact us at any time with those questions. We will send out an email with the recording and the presentation out to you, as well as contact information for Neeraj if you want to talk to him directly. Before we leave, I do want to invite you to our next webinar. It is about integrating your LMS with Salesforce and how that can make your life so much easier. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been a webinar by Aplusify. Neeraj, thank you very much. Any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, I think if we can do things right in the first place, that is something that we should aim for. And if it requires maybe spending more time with the business, engaging the users and getting a buy-in and creating that culture in the team that things have to be right in the first place. I think if we have that culture in place and we are able to do that right at the planning and the analysis phase, the data migration stuff can be much smoother, and we can have a much better running system which we have migrated, which is helpful for both of us in terms of users, in terms of your members, in terms of your donors, or in terms of your associations. So plan the stuff beforehand and do things right in the first instance.
Thank you very much, Neeraj. You always have great tips for us to put into practice. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. And until next time, stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.